Hello again. Let's talk a little bit about cardio today, shall we? More specifically, cardio for fat loss. And address the question of if you are wasting your time on the treadmill, the bike, or the cross trainer, whatever your preference is, in search of fat loss. If you're not getting the results that you're getting, is it just all a big waste of time? It might be time to rethink your strategy. And if you believe that lots of cardiovascular activity is the key on its own to fat loss, maybe cleaning up your diet too, but the main key to fat loss is long duration exercise on the cardio machine, then this podcast might surprise you. That approach is a massive mistake and that could be holding you back from your goals. And I'm going to dive into that and explain the reasons why. So we've all been there before. We've walked into a gym, we've chosen a favourite cardio machine, bike, treadmill, cross trainer, elliptical trainer, Stairmaster, whatever it might be, and we've reluctantly got on there and we've busted a gut, looking at that magical number on the display screen, seeing it go up and up and up and up, breaking it down in several different ways to try and justify how long or predict how much further you've got to go, and finally you hit that number, whether it be 500, 1,000 or more, and then you're suddenly relieved and you feel accomplished because you've burnt that many calories and that you're well on your way because someone told you 3,500 calories equals a gram of fat, right? So you're well on your way to burning that fat and you couldn't be happier. So you get off feeling suddenly motivated to do it again tomorrow. That approach, huge question mark over that. Let's get into it and find out why. Hi, I'm Simon from the Deep South Experiment, and this is a podcast where I kind of like to address myths or break the mold in what people are doing in terms of their approach for fat loss, for muscle building, for their nutritional approach, and just really share information and insight to try and help people improve what they're doing and achieve the results that they want in the gym or in the kitchen. So it's a long held belief that cardiovascular exercise is the most efficient tool for fat loss. Hop on a cardio machine and just away you go. Keep the intensity low, make it long duration, and you're going to burn all these calories and you're going to be well on your way to achieving your goal. But this belief often leads to frustration and not to mention poor results. Maybe that's why you're here, to find out the reasons why. Because cardiovascular exercise is very much an inefficient tool. And there are other things that you need to incorporate or concentrate more on in order to achieve what you're trying to achieve. And this includes other forms of training, and it includes most definitely a focus on nutrition. Without those, well, you probably continue to get your poor results and continue to be frustrated. So I guess there are a few questions that need to be answered, and first and foremost is, why isn't cardio an effective fat loss tool? Many places or many people say it is, so why isn't it? And does cardio really interfere with muscle building? And I guess a big question is, what mistakes do people make when they're focusing just on cardio alone? And if all this stuff is problematic, then what can be done? Like, what's the way forward? What principles of training or what nutrition do I actually need to incorporate or focus on in addition to this cardio to make it all worthwhile, to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and to stop that frustrated feeling and to actually get results? One of the main problems with cardio, and this has always been a problem for forever and a day, is that cardio tends to cost the body muscle. And that's really important because of the effects that will leave you with. A prime example of this is if you take a marathon runner, someone who does lots of long duration, low intensity exercise, run around that track at a relatively low speed. They train to become faster and more efficient, but ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, they are running at a low intensity because they can't keep high intensity up for a long period of time. So therefore it has to be low intensity relative to how well trained and fit they are at the time. So they are running at a low intensity for a long duration and doing a lot of it. That is marathon walking or running, completing that distance within the fastest time that you can. Now look at a sprinter. So a sprinter is running very short distance at a very high intensity. The total opposite to what people are doing on cardio machines, and the total opposite to what a marathon runner is doing. And you compare those two physiques. The marathon runner will be they'll look very like they have very little definition, and they'll also have quite a flabby appearance. If you look at a slow motion replay, and you'll see like the fat moving backwards and forwards on their body as their legs hit the ground, and that pressure runs itself through up their leg, up their hips, etc. You'll see that movement. However, if you did the same thing for a sprinter, not only do they appear muscular and defined, but their slow motion replay will show you the movement of muscle, not fat, because they have very little fat. And what is actually moving are all the muscle fibers, and you can see the total difference in the two different physiques. That is because they have totally different training. They have low versus high intensity, and that's what it all boils down to. And then also there's the number of calories. Marathon runners and sprinters don't look at these, well, I suspect they don't, but when you go onto a cardio machine, let's say it's a treadmill, you stare at that number, a lot of people tend to, and they say, right, I want to be in 500 calories today, or I want to be in 1,000. The problem is that those machines cannot accurately tell you how many calories that you've burnt. There's a very scientific way to do a VO2 max that can tell you, or be as accurate as possible. But certainly getting onto a treadmill and maybe hooking up with your heart rate, but it tries to tell you how many calories that you've burnt. Not accurate at all. And there's also the lack of focus on resistance training. Now, when you don't focus on resistance training, you aren't sending any signals to the body whatsoever that you want to preserve muscle. You're not giving it any need to preserve muscle. All you're saying is that I have a sudden need to produce X amount of energy in order to produce X amount of movement. Where does that energy come from? And the lack of focus on resistance training is a huge component, and it's a big reason behind the lack of fat loss efficiency. In other words, how good you are at burning body fat. If you do not do any resistance training, the body has no reason to keep a hold of the muscle that it has, and will probably turn to that muscle for fuel rather than body fat, or at least the percentages of body fat versus muscle mass will be skewed in a way that is unfavorable to what your goals are. And another problem beyond that is nutrition simply isn't understood. Is if you don't focus on your protein intake and your calorie intake, but you just spend countless hours on the treadmill burning as many calories as you think that you are, then that's going to be a huge problem. And a reason why you're frustrated and are not seeing results that you're hoping for. And quite frankly, you deserve. If you're putting your body through that, you're sacrificing your time, you're sacrificing your desires, you're sacrificing anything that might be important to you in order to get into the gym or onto that treadmill, wherever it may be, and do what you're doing. A lot of sacrifice for not a lot of gain. Be very frustrating. So cardiovascular exercise is not an effective tool in replacement for a proper diet. When you succeed at cardiovascular, whatever that might mean, let's say if you drop 5 pounds or 2.5 kilos or whatever it might be, and you think, well, I've been on the treadmill and that's why that's occurred. thing to ask yourself is, what have you done to your diet? Because generally, when people make a decision to dedicate time to doing something new, such as going for a run or a walk or a bike ride or a treadmill or cross train or whatever it might be, you're adopting that change into your life. Generally, that mindset will come along with a change in nutrition, some sort of change, whether it be to cut out a packet of biscuits or to have a look at eating cleaner in some respect. There'll be a change in that respect, and quite often, and I'll put money on it more often than not, that change in nutrition is the reason for why you've succeeded to the extent that you have, not because you've jumped on the cardio machine. Because calories that you burn through cardiovascular exercise are generally really, really quickly reconsumed, because the number of calories that you burn during that time frame is so low, and people don't realize that. And that's why that number is often inflated. You spend half an hour on the cardio machine and it tells you burnt 500 calories. You think, excellent, all is well with the world and I'm well on my way. And then often you're of that mentality of, well, I've done this, burnt 500 calories, therefore I deserve some sort of reward. And you're also going to be more hungry as well, because one of the body's defenses is to stop you burning fat, is to increase your hormones for your appetite, etc. If you've ever done a long walk or swim or bike ride or whatever it may be, you generally tend to feel hungry. And when you've done this cardio and you feel hungry, feel like you need a self-reward, then you will eat. And then often what you eat is easy to also overeat. So if you eat and you overeat, or you just eat without overeating, those calories that you're consuming are likely to outstrip anything that you've just burnt on the treadmill or whatever machine that you're using. So the sad reality is that what you spend a couple of hours burning off doing whatever activity you're going to do, you can easily reconsume and more. You can overcompensate for that within minutes after you finish working out. And that's often where things tend to go a wee bit wrong. And then to further add to the problem is that cardio alone is not favourable for keeping a hold of muscle mass. The body's got to get energy from somewhere, and just cardio alone, you're asking it to produce X amount of movement. So it requires X amount of energy to do that. Where does it get it from? And if you're not doing cardio exercise along with resistance training, the body has no reason to keep a hold of that muscle. So therefore the metabolism will likely come down. Not too dissimilar to a fad diet, and how that also brings the amount of muscle mass that you have down. So some sort of progressive overload over a period of time, and consistently doing that along with the cardio exercise. That tells your body, please don't burn my muscle because I need it. In fact, I'm trying to develop it. So leave it alone and go to my fat stores in order to burn fat. Thank you very much. You might not want to thank your body for that, because, it's not an entity that you're talking to. It's just something in your mind. But anyway, progressive overload needs to be supported by nutrition. That will help you to stimulate muscle and burn fat. And by nutrition in this respect, without getting into the weeds and just concentrating on some of the critical points first, is protein intake and calorie consumption. Let's get those two right, and then look at the rest later on. Those are the two key components to really focus on. So the take-home message here is that cardio alone, not an effective tool. It needs to be supported by something else. And the something else tends to be nutrition, calorie consumption and protein first, and then resistance exercise. Something that you are overloading your body with over time. You don't need to kill yourself. You just need to be doing something to send the signals to your body of, hey, look, let's maintain or build this muscle. Let's not use it for fuel. That's the idea. And the next time you approach a cardio machine, just think, I'll ignore that number on the screen because it doesn't mean anything. Just get on there and work as hard as you can for a shorter period of time in order to represent that 100-meter sprinter rather than the marathon runner. And make sure that you're spending the time that you've saved doing that by going to the resistance section of the room and lifting some weights to stimulate the muscle to grow or at least be maintained. And then go home and make sure that you're not overeating and that the rest of the day or the following day is being planned out and that you're eating a nice healthy diet where protein consumption and calorie consumption have been the main focuses. So with that, I hope that's been informative for you. Get after it at the gym, maintain that motivation, keep going, keep pushing at it, clean up that diet, and incorporate nutritional practices that support fat loss. Make sure you're doing resistance training so that you're encouraging the body to turn to fat rather than muscle, and just try and be as productive as you can on that treadmill or the bike or the rowing machine, whatever it may be. All the best to you. Thanks for checking me out, and I'll see you again next time.